What's up, guys, and welcome to the Score eSports podcast. I am, of course, your host, Colin McNeil. As always, in the studio with me is Josh Burry.
Greetings.
We got Gabriel Zoltan Johan.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today?
We're doing fine, Gabe. And today, we're going to be talking about Worlds. This is our pre-League of Legends World Championship show. Pretty excited about this one. It's been in the works for a while. Before we get into exactly who we have on, because we've got an awesome guest today.
We do. This person's been to Worlds twice.
Yes.
You might actually say it's an amazing guest.
Wow.
Jeez Louise.
But I just wanted to introduce everyone and let people know exactly whose voices they're hearing, whose faces they're seeing, and why they're here. So I host the podcast. That's kind of the end of my story.
That's all he's here for.
You're our chaperone, right? Like
That's
your
right.
adult supervision.
Yeah.
So
Adult
we don't.
supervision.
I definitely need it.
I'll start talking about World of Warcraft or something if you're not here. And then
You probably still will.
I'll try.
Gabe, you may know by the name Invert, possibly. He
Yep.
is the coach to the University of Toronto's League of Legends team, and it's safe to say he is the office's resident league expert. Time someone has a question, they literally turn around like, Gabe,
Did this happen?
did this team win place at this and this league at this
Yeah.
year?
And,
you say
and Gabe
no.
usually has his headphones on, so you
So
gotta
you
shake.
gotta
say it like
poke
10
me.
times.
Yeah.
No, I just grab him by the shoulders, like, oh, Gabe, ah.
Now, the man behind the boards, Josh Burry, knows a lot about a lot of different esports. And in fact, he wrote an entire series about his journey into League of Legends. And he's also a self-professed EU fan, if I'm not mistaken. So take that as you will.
I am an EU fan, and I'm not happy with the groups, but we'll get into that later.
We will. And who are we going to get into it with? None other than the man, Maurice Stückenschneider. You probably know him better as Amazing.
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 It's incredible. It is.
Let's try to avoid the usage of amazing as an adjective,
Yeah.
as like a way to describe things for
let's-
the remainder of this episode.
I agree.
Let's introduce him though. Amazing. Hello.
Hey there.
Welcome to the Score eSports podcast. You've been
How's
here.
it going?
It's going pretty well, and you've been here twice now. This is your second time.
You're the first, I believe. Oh no, Steve Arhansen would be the first returning
And the
guest.
second would be your boy Semler.
Second would be Semler. You're lucky number 3. Third time's a charm on this one. So
What
I'd ask you on it anyway.
I wanted to ask though. I mean, this is the second time you've been on the podcast. You also went to Worlds twice. So like, which was more exciting for you?
Being on this podcast, having so much
Yes.
entertainment.
man,
Thanks for at least
But that-
giving that one to us, man.
Yes.
That was-
Put me on the spot,
I know
Paul.
that second time was pretty slick. I don't know about that.
Now, guys, before we really get into the nitty gritty of Worlds, because there's a lot that I think Amazing is going to want to talk about,
Me
perhaps
too.
want to challenge us on. I do want to just quickly touch on just a few days ago, Amazing, you announced that you are no longer with Mysterious Monkeys. And I just wanted to, before we get into Worlds, as I say, get your thoughts on that, the process, what happened, where you're at now, and how the free agency is going.
I mean, what happened is basically that obviously we didn't quite stay in the LCS due to like a number of circumstances, like whatever it is, like sometimes people didn't perform to the standards and whatever it is.
Right.
So I did decide to basically announce my free agency and try to search for options, potentially even as a coach or assistant coach to begin with, simply to find out whether or not that's something I would want to do in the future or whatever it is. So yeah, it was a pretty natural decision after what happened, basically, like a result-based decision, basically.
Well, I'm actually glad that you brought up the word coaching, because in your initial free agency announcement, you also said that you were available to possibly be a coach, as you just said.
Yeah.
And on your own Facebook, you published a somewhat lengthy post that I guess I would describe as like a philosophical treatise on coaching.
Like a manifesto of sorts.
You could call it a
Yeah.
manifesto. Now, Gabe, our own Gabe here, is a coach himself, and I think you have a few thoughts on Amazing statements. So I'm actually going to let you take this one.
Well, I just wanted to know first, how Amazing kind of came up with this statement, because it kind of came in the middle of the season, kind of at the tail end of the season, kind of what inspired him to write this in the first
It
place.
was in mid-August that
Yeah.
you said he
Mid-August,
published it, right?
Right. So what inspired amazing. What inspired you to write this statement in the first place? And has your kind of philosophy on coaching changed since you wrote this statement? And what is it now?
I've always wanted to make a piece on coaching per se, but honestly, like the immediate reason why I posted at that point that I did was because of a pretty offensive Nico the Pico interview almost, where I think the description was like that he should have benched me earlier.
Right.
And I think that was basically around that time. So I felt like almost like having an answer to that because I'm someone that is like obviously pretty vocal about like what he thinks of coaches and how coaching should be. And I think like back in the past, I've even said like things like that. I don't think that coaching in the Western scene right now is as useful as it should be. So like it was pretty natural to just bring it up at some point and actually like just describe how coaches in the West are failing, because I think that's what my manifesto almost was about. How coaches in the West basically lose respect very early on in most cases and basically are not able to regain it back. And I almost want to describe like from like a player standpoint how coaches are approaching things and where it goes wrong. And I think that's what my post was about. And obviously, like given the fact that Nico de Pico made that kind of offensive argument almost towards me, I felt like, yeah, this where you failed, and I'm just describing you what you did wrong, and not even from the heart, like from an offensive place almost, but like I felt like I wanted to explain like how it works and how it happened basically.
Right. So it hasn't changed. You currently still kind of hold this philosophy about coaching. It hasn't changed in any meaningful ways since you published this?
Not necessarily. Like, I think that coaching in the West is still almost like obsolete unless you have like a top tier coach who's actually able to transcend the team's game. But I think in most cases, coaches are either bona fide analysts or they're life coaches. So either way, no coach in the West, I feel, is actually transcending the team's spirit and game almost.
Right. Well,
I don't know what your take exactly was on it, Gabe, but like as the non-coach here, like I
also a non-coach, just waiting.
well, yes, this is also true. I took what I took out of it a lot was how difficult it actually is to be a coach. I'm not sure if that was your intention, amazing, but I think you did a really good job of putting down like, listen, these are the factors they have to deal with. They have to babysit a bunch of kids. This is their first time out. Not a lot of social skills, tons of expectations, not a lot of resources. And it actually made me sort of go, okay, God, why does this guy actually want to become a coach after this?
Why I would want to become a coach after this? Like, the thing is that like, I feel like that I have such a unique perspective on the challenges at hand. Like, and I've seen it like be done right too. Like in terms of like, for example, Reginald in season 4, like when he coached the TSM team that I was part of at Worlds, that I saw it go right. You know, so I think from my point of view, like due to my understanding of the challenges and why things are going wrong so often and more often than not, I think that because of that, like have a distinct point of view that I can actually like use in my potential work as a coach or as an assistant coach.
So I found 3 things really interesting about this, and I'd like to kind of discuss it amongst everyone. So the first thing that I found really interesting is kind of a contradiction almost in the idealized version of a coach that you were writing about. So you talked about Pat Riley, Greg Popovich, et cetera, as kind of examples of good sports coaches, which I agree with. They're fantastic sports coaches. You have people like Eric Spoelstra, et cetera. But then you go into the next paragraph talking about how kind of these idealized coaches are kind of man's men, and how coaching is necessarily, and being authoritative is necessarily like a masculine activity. I'm not going to get into kind of the whole because I am of an international relations background, and IR theory and feminist theory kind of talks about this as well, how we kind of have to see female political leaders apply masculine traits to be seen as serious and amazing. I'm sure you're familiar with that through like Angela Merkel, right? As like someone who has to do that in Germany to be seen as a serious person, right? So I found it really interesting that you applied that to coaching as well, but also had examples of more compassionate coaches, actually, right? Like Greg Popovich is not seen as a man's man. He's actually seen as one of the most compassionate coaches in all of sports. He lets players take time off to do certain things, like star players take time off to do certain things to recover fully, to, you know, be mentally in the right state of mind. He did that at last year's playoffs with Kawhi Leonard, where he was like, you know, I could let Kawhi play and give us a chance at these playoffs, but, you know, this man needs a rest. This man needs, after that injury that he suffered, etc., he needs, like, to mentally get back into things, not just physically get back into things. And so I found it really interesting that you have this idea of, like, good coaching that is inherently masculine, but then also have these examples of people who don't share, you know, stereotypically masculine traits, right? What kind of coaching is this? Something that's, you know, League of Legends specific, though? Do you think, like, these kids who are so young, as you described in there as well, need, like, a really masculine figure to be that authority figure and coaching figure?
I mean, like, to come back to the point, like, of, like, that the examples don't quite, like, fit the man's man criteria. I definitely agree. Like, I think that Greg Popovich wouldn't be a good example. I think Phil Jackson wouldn't even be a good example. Like, obviously someone like Pat Riley would be a great example. Yeah. So, like, obviously there's kind of, like, distinction between those people, like, that I think in general, though, like, they demand that certain respect almost of the players due to how they approach like their team and the team's philosophy and almost lead it. Mm-hmm. So, like, whatever is happening in the team comes back to them. So if, let's say, Kawhi wouldn't have been rested, or like Kawhi was rested, and Greg Popovich made that statement. He said, "You're gonna sit down now, and we're not gonna, like, have you potentially be injured or something like that." Everything that happens within those teams basically comes back to those coaches. So in the sense, like, that's where I guess, like, men's man wasn't quite the thing that I was searching for, but rather like someone that demands and leads the team with respect and authority. I think in league per se, I think a man coach, basically someone that actually demands respect by being authoritative and being, like, demanding and being pushing in most cases, is something that necessarily the younger the team is. If the team is consisting of a lot of, like, 17, 18-year-old players, maybe 19, I think if you have these people coming in with a, like, zero to, or like little to none life experience, like, you have to guide them. You don't just have to guide them through, like, I guess, like, the league, but also through life, because you have to basically make them part of a system. You have to make them buy into a system. And how do you make teenagers buy into a system that like, they don't really believe in? You cannot do that. So you have to kind of force that belief into it. You have to, like, demand authority and give reasons why you should be like, basically respected and followed, and make sure that everyone stays under one leadership, and basically allow these players to almost, like, be formed under your supervision. I think the older the players get, obviously, like, the older, like, let's say, for example, me, I think unless I had, like, a 30-year-old, 35-year-old coach who had a lot of life experience, like similar to Kokoma, maybe, like, I wouldn't necessarily need someone to do that for me, because obviously, like, I have a, like, experience. Even I've worked with like what is it, like, life coach more or less in Fnatic, whose name was Jens, and we all, like, later went over to NIP, and even with him, I had a lot of talks about, like, basic direction in life and, like, direction within league, what I have to do in order to perform to my utter best, and basically things that I wouldn't necessarily buy into unless I heard it from someone that basically had the life experience coming in. So I think in league, depending on the age of the players and depending on their pedigree, like, in terms of, like, how many championships they have had, how many years they've been playing, like, things that are under the belt, like, you need someone that guides them, force them to play under one system in order to unite them. Like, obviously, like, this year, I have a prime example where I felt, like, completely out of place was with Nico the Pico, because of the fact that he didn't have the life experience, he didn't have the championship pedigree coming in, he didn't have anything, like, under his belt that I could see as something respectful, because even though I had him last year as a coach in OG, like, when he tried to basically make everyone buy into become this authoritarian coach that guides and leads everyone, there was no way in hell that's going to happen, because of the fact that there's no place and no ability to, like, basically create authority and create respect. So as soon as that stepped in, like, there were obviously conflicts coming in. There's no way that that's going to be, like, resolved unless someone takes a step back. And in those cases, like if the coach doesn't have that respect to come in and that authority to come in with, there's little to no chance that's going to happen later on.
They lose confidence. Yeah.
The other thing I think is really interesting about this discussion, I think it's something we've talked about before on the podcast in terms of like young esports players, is that, you know, in a sports system, you already sort of have developed a respect for the idea of coaching when you come in.
Yes.
But, you know, if you're in solo queue, there's no coach sitting there with your team being like, hey, you guys should do this.
Yep.
And so the idea of a coach is foreign in itself, right? Like, it's not like soccer or basketball where you have a coach even when you first start playing. You have a coach,
like
even if it's just your friend's
old.
dad, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have a coach, and you know, you form that sort of idea that person, even if they're not an expert at the sport, they're still somebody that you should show respect to.
Yep.
And that gets built up, I think, over time. And so you're already used to doing it. And then, you know, if you're great at solo queue, like you're a player like who built their legacy on solo queue so far, and you know, this is your first shot, and there's a coach who's like, you need to tone down all these things you do. Yeah. I mean, I could see why people would be defensive, you know? Like, you've just never... In solo queue, who's telling you how to play?
Your team.
And if they tell you how to play, you can mute them or you can flame them, right? Like, I'm not saying either of those is necessarily the right option, but you have options. And in the LCS and soon the academy teams for NALCS, you're not going to have that option. You can't just mute your coach. Right, like that's
hopefully not. I mean, hopefully not.
Now, Gabe, are there more coaching things that you want to pick Amazing's brain about? Because on paper, this is a pre-world show.
Yeah, this is a pre-world show.
Yeah.
I think I honestly
On paper.
On paper.
Yes, because this is a podcast that's on paper.
I'm an old man.
The outline's on paper.
Okay, I'm old.
But
it's a book.
I guess the final thing I wanted to ask is, you know, you want to dip your toes in this as someone, you know, who you said you have the life experience. Obviously, the accomplishments are there, attending those international competitions and going as far as you have. Do you think that is something that you bring to the table to teams only in Europe? Or, like, are you thinking about North America? Are you thinking about going to other regions as well? What are you thinking with respect to that?
I mean, I'm definitely thinking about North America. I think that the use, like EU, how it's gonna potentially be as far as rumors go, like obviously that everyone's heard so far. Like, I think that the EU system per se is not that attractive to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that a lot of EU players like have that issue more so that you guys just talked about that, like this idea of being coach is not that ingrained because of the fact that in Germany or like in most like European countries, you don't really have like school sports coming in. So like you may have physical education, but you don't have a school system that basically like makes you play football, makes you play basketball. Like, you're going to become part of those teams like if you try hard enough. And that's not really part of the school system. So like the ideas of being coached and being like almost like have a high hierarchy as opposed to a low hierarchy, like, or like flat hierarchy that you have more often in Europe. Like in NA, it's most likely that you're going to follow someone and you're going to respect like your superior, and that's how it is. So I think that in NA, you're more likely to just listen to what your coaches, your assistant coaches, and analysts say, based on the fact that that's your paycheck. And if you don't do that, you're probably going to be kicked.
It's much more money involved, makes it more professional, more serious.
True.
Does it though? Just inherently, like I'm getting
so.
paid more money,
it's
so
like
I better listen to this guy. Like,
or they're being paid more money too. There's an element of authority kind of laden in capital. So
okay,
yeah, I think I agree with that.
And the fact that the most of the LCS owners are so close to the teams,
yes.
like Reggie, like I mean, Hotshot is not a prime example, but like Reggie, then you have Noah from IMT. Then you have like who was the CEO, and then you have Jack from C9. Like they are actually like they are bleeding for their teams just as like the players are. So like damn sure you're not gonna like oppose them because they're doing everything for you. Vice versa, you're doing everything for them.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense.
Well, there you go. Getting to what I said was on paper, Worlds.
World.
What's that?
Well,
what's that?
You see, Gabe, it's this upcoming competition.
Little small tournament.
Now, what I'm really looking forward to, actually, is that this is around the time where esports media comes out with all their lists, the top teams, this group and that group, the top players, blah, 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 their predictions, their brackets. Funny enough, theScore eSports is also doing that.
Crazy.
Yeah, I was asked to participate in this, and I was basically I was basically taken hostage and forced to agree to terms. So
That is not
I
true
know,
at all.
okay. Before we get to the excuses, hold on. All I
Oh
wanted
my
to say is that
goodness.
I am looking forward to the part of the show when we get to dissect the scores, the SwordArt eSports top 20 players going into Worlds. However,
yes.
before we do that, I would actually like to get Amazing and your guys' take on each of the groups as we know them.
You want to do the groups first?
So far,
Okay.
if that's okay with you guys,
I'm
if that's
amenable
permissible.
to that.
You're amenable.
Oh, you want to save the spiciness?
I do.
For the very end of this thing. Is
I
that,
do.
what happens.
Okay.
So this is pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each group, and I want to get Amazing's take on it regarding how interesting it is, who he thinks is most likely to make it out, and just the general feel, the color of the group.
Should we? Are we going to talk about play-ins, or you want to just at the end say who you expect to come out of play-ins at the end?
Myself or
are we
Amazing?
going? I don't
We're
know.
just doing main groups.
Okay, sure.
We'll do main groups as this is being recorded. Of course, play-ins haven't happened yet, so
Right.
we got three teams per group.
Yeah. Okay.
So getting right into it, Group A got Edward Gaming, SKT, and AHQ Esports Club.
Right. So
How does
no
that sound
Western
to
teams.
Amazing?
So just before we like hard transition, the way that groups work for play-ins is that no team from those three regions can become the fourth team.
Yes,
right?
that is correct. Which
Okay.
means that World Elite and HKA are unable to be seeded into that.
Should they proceed from play-ins,
Yes.
which is of course what many people are predicting. Okay, cool. So Group A. Do you have any initial thoughts on this? Amazing, like in terms of overall strength and even watchability. Is this a group you're going to tune in to watch?
I mean, the only games you're gonna tune in to watch is basically SKT against EDG. Like,
Yeah.
it's basically like, I mean, they've met so many times in international play already that like there almost is a rivalry at this point. So I expect like both of them to come through, but both of them to like actually like be the only watchable games in that group because HQ is not gonna put up a fight. They were not even like considered a really strong team in their region. They just got through because everyone else is pretty bad too. So in the end, like Group A is potentially already decided. And I think it's EDG and SKT.
I like that. That's decisive.
Let's say like Fnatic goes into that group. Does that
God.
change? Like, does that change like the potential rankings there, or for you at least?
It really depends on how EDG's international play is coming around this time around. Because like, what we've seen from EDG in the past and what we've seen from EDG like almost every international event besides MSI 2015 is that they go into groups, they look like the favorites or like top two favorites, they shit the bed,
Yeah.
and then somehow don't come out as like the first seed that they are supposed to be or something like that. Like in this group, obviously, like you expect them to come second, but if Fnatic comes in and they actually like pull through with a lot of practice and they're actually like in a form where they're respectable and somewhat similar to G2, I can see like them going head to head with EDG and actually like trading games, and then it depends on who beats EHQ to basically to determine who's going to come out second, I think.
So that makes it sound like you think SKT is like good to go, that they're just gonna ride through on this group no matter what. Is that right?
Pretty much, I can see them maybe dropping one game
Yeah.
to either EDG. No, to EDG, only to EDG. There's no way they're going to drop to Fnatic. There's no way.
I am really interested about this group. Obviously, there is the international rivalry between EDG and SKT, but I'm also and maybe we will read too much into this, but I want to see what SKT really looks like in those games
Yeah.
against EDG,
I
and
think-
depending on their opponent, if it is a Fnatic or even a Cloud9, because it can't be World Elite, obviously. So I want to see what SKT is like. I don't want to say it's completely a heat check, but to me, it's kind of a heat check because we know they're bringing Huni to Worlds,
Yep.
so they're going to have both junglers. They'll have a jungler on the bench. That, to me, is one of the reasons I really want to see this because, yeah, you expect them to get out of this group, almost certainly, but how good do they look doing it?
Yeah.
You know, is it really shaky against EDGs? And like, I want to know.
Yeah. I think.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm pretty like weirded out almost by them bringing Huni. Like I guess I understand why they do it, but I honestly think that Untar like later on in the basically like in the like actually like playoffs that are coming in, like in the round of top 8, top 4, whatever it is, I think he's gonna be way better against potential Korean top matchups, honestly. But maybe that's just me thinking conservatively, like in terms of like SKT actually performing to their usual standards. Against this group, I think Huni is gonna stomp pretty hard and actually gonna look really, really good, and maybe even be overhyped for like the actual quarterfinals and whatever it is afterwards.
Yeah, I think if you're watching this group, you're watching it to see SKT, see how SKT looks, and specifically to see how this SKT looks with Huni, because as it stands, they've been struggling really hard with Huni in the summer season, and see which jungler they decide to play with, because, you know, the top matchup for EDG is really bad. Like, Mouse is not a great top laner, but Ziv is actually an AHQ, is a good top laner, and Soaz will also be a good kind of addition to that top lane pool in that group. So seeing Huni, how he performs there, will be pretty interesting.
So just before any other comments on this group or moving on, whatever we decide to do, I want to ask, like, Gabe and Amazing, like, is taking Huni the bigger risk, bigger reward thing for SKT? Like, how do you characterize that decision?
So the way I see it personally is that Huni is going to be better than most top laners at this tournament, is their thinking, because he has the best of 5 experience and international experience that Untara does not. Whereas later on, his only real threat in the bracket stage, I think SKT thinks that it's Cuvée and Khan, right? That those are the only two people who can really match up well to Huni's aggressive style and kind of play into that. So they're not. I don't think they're worried about any of the other top lane talent. And when you get to the Riot list of top players at Worlds, and you get to like the other lists as well, and you get, you know, spoiler
Your
alert
list,
to
yeah.
our list,
Yeah.
top lane talent is actually pretty garbage this year.
Dang.
So
Shit.
Dang.
It's garbage,
Damn,
he
I
says.
can't say that.
no,
I-
just like
I-
comparatively.
But what do you think, Amazing? Like, what is this a high risk, high reward strategy for SKT? Like, how do you characterize taking Huni over either taking only one jungler? They could have just taken Blank, right, if they
Right.
wanted to,
Yeah.
but they didn't do that. So
I definitely agree that it's like they're looking at the other Korean tops. I don't think they're really even like thinking about anyone else in the whole system. Like they don't even think about like anyone in the group. They just we want to match up later on. Like basically develop Huni even further than he already is. Like I think he had a really good game 3 in the finals, which was like the only game that they won. He actually looked good in, because like Untara got destroyed per se by Khan. So I think what they're thinking is that, hey, we want to establish Huni as someone that is strong, like someone that is like a individually good top laner. Hope that it buys into our system like by the end of the of basically like quarterfinals, because most likely they're gonna face like the Korean teams in semis and in finals. So they hope to like just have him be really good at that point, like and basically part of the system and smart about the game, because I think that's the only thing that he's lacking. Like he's individually talented, but his decision making is lackluster, and sometimes he goes for really stupid plays.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and name that group SKT Leaves, because it seems like you guys
gotta read
are,
the tea leaves. That's
you
nice.
guys are,
I
yeah.
like
it's
it.
Are you
nice,
doing
know.
this for every group? Because I'm
You want-
gonna go.
I might. Before you do go,
We on team leaves. That's how it works.
exactly. For Group B, we've got Longzhu, we've got Immortals, and we've got our boys, the Gigabyte Marines. Woo!
They're our boys.
I don't know. Just
They're college boys. That's
I
for
guess
sure.
they're my boys.
You just claimed them. All right, cool.
I
cool.
suppose so. Yeah.
Who's your favorite player on them?
All
right,
that would
let's
be,
go.
Wow, did you just actually just like straight call them out?
You just bladed me live on my own podcast. I will leave now.
Okay, so it's just me and you now. Amazing. Everybody's
gone. Yeah.
Everybody's gone.
So I actually really like this group. I think it's a great group to watch. This is probably the most fun group of the entire tournament, because all of these teams have really explosive early games that snowball into like zany mid to late game victories. So this will be the group, if you want early action, you're going to want to watch this group. I think that like Optimus and Levi on the Gigabyte Marines are, you know, really good, really good early game duo. You know, Levi is a really good playmaker. Lee Sin is kind of back for Worlds. We'll see if it pops up at all. and Immortals too. They really like to snowball, be really aggressive with their pushing lanes. And Longzhu, I mean, everyone sees Longzhu as, PraY and Gorilla, this rock in the bottom lane. They'll never be outpushed. BDD plays these global champions that help them in the side lanes. And then Khan is just Khan, the split push monster, right?
Yeah.
So early game, it's going to be wild as heck. Wild as hell.
You can say hell on this podcast.
Wild as hell.
You're allowed. Yeah, we said wait.
This is going to be insane. This group's going to be so fun to watch. I would say if you're like a casual spectator, you're tuning in at 2 a.m. because Chinese time zones.
Jesus.
Oh, God.
This is going to wake you up. This is going to wake you up.
Hey, amazing. It's not even so bad for you, man. It's like completely worse for us. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. Actually, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So amazing. With that being said, are you as hyped as Gabe seems to be for this group?
Yeah, I am. Especially if Fnatic, which is obviously potentially possible,
Oh, yeah.
is able to join. Like, if you think about it, like, I think actually Maurice is the most conservative team out of those three mentioned. Like, even though they have that explosive early game, I think they're not as reliant as Longzhu and Gum seems to be. Like, Longzhu is gonna destroy around the top side of the map. Like, I think actually PraY and Gorilla, like as you said, they're a rock in the bottom. And I think they're gonna be fine against any matchup in the group. But I think it's mostly gonna come down to top lane matchups, and I think the top mid jungle duos or trios maybe are actually gonna be deciding like every game, because
Yeah.
if you look at the setups, like you have Xmithy and you have Flame, and then you have like the All-Star duo like in Khan. Khan's not as much, but like still the two together. Like especially if Jace comes through at some point, I think it's gonna be like destroying on top lane, like especially level 5, level 6 under the enemy turret. So that's gonna come in, and I expect a lot of roams like from every lane towards every lane.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it fun, especially if Fnatic is able to join and they actually like find their like almost like aggressive playstyle from the top lane towards like TP's bottom and everything like that. I think you will not be able to predict any of the ganks coming in.
Yeah.
I'm for myself. I do hope Fnatic makes it in this group, because
Makes it even more fun.
I want to see Fnatic Immortals. I think that'd be a really you'd only get to see 2 games because it's BO1s, but I'd still love to see that. However, for me, what I'm really looking for here, Immortals bottom lane against Longzhu. So Ole has come. I think he's really developed as a player.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of improvement from him. And he and Cody Sun are like they've been doing really well.
It's their first year in NA too.
Yeah. So what are we gonna see from Ole specifically? I'm actually more worried about Ole in this situation against Longzhu. He likes to make plays, right? And these are the Titans. Like, a lot of people are like, these guys are favorites. So it feels like there's that extra little bit of motivation to be like, I gotta do this.
2v2,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that's my
Make a statement.
That's my only worry. I know that he's developed a lot as a player. Even his warding has really improved. Like, there's a lot of good things to say about the Immortals bot lane. But I mean, the Longzhu bot lane, by basically any measure, you expect that to sort of be a lopsided confrontation. So I'm a bit worried about them. I want to see them do well. I would love for Ole to style on some people, especially Longzhu's bottom lane. But I'm just that's the only thing. I'm a little worried about him. So hopefully he does well and he keeps his head in the game.
I'm a bit worried about their finals performance and whether that translates to Worlds as well, because that was like their first real tough best of 5 that they've played all year, and they looked not like that. Bot lane specifically did not look great. Doublelift and Biofrost every game just like was consistently on them, and PraY and Gorilla honestly is more seasoned and is just like a better bot lane. So I think bot is going to be really problematic. I think Pobelter can hold his own against BDD.
Really?
Yeah, I do think so. And Flame, versus Khan is like,
that's going to be
a really good matchup.
Now that you're talking about it, like all these lanes are really hype.
Yeah.
Now, amazing. Is there anything in there that these guys said that you really wholeheartedly disagree with, or conversely that you think is correct?
I don't know. I don't see Ole having issues. I think Cody's is going to be exposed. I think that's going to be a whole issue. Like, I don't like the support matchups in this meta. Like, are pretty standard. It works like this: whoever gets Arden first, like especially like coming out towards World, is most likely going to win unless you have gang setups. And I think in case like there's going to be like an off, like something that throws them off guard, like similar to how MF came through in 2016 Worlds and even through SKT off guard. Like if there's anything that Longzhu has prepared, especially with Gorilla being such a smart player, like I don't see Cody Sun getting through laning phase in any of the games that they're being faced up. And just like in an A, you're not really being challenged in the aggressive kind of style. Like you have those Clone Fiesta games that you also have in EU and whatever it is, but the aggression level is not as high. And I think Longzhu is gonna like, and Gam 2 is gonna bring it to them. It's gonna be really surprising for Immortals to actually like be faced with an aggression that is like that transcends theirs. So
Right.
I think that's basically the biggest if Immortals is able to actually like, get to the same level of like aggression and is able to actually like understand the game on the same level, like they will probably look better, and they may make it off Goose, but I don't see them like succeeding against Longzhu at all, especially with Cody-san being the AD carry and not being experienced at all.
Right.
Well, because you guys are so hyped for this group, and it is, of course, only best of ones, I'm going to call this group BO Fun.
No.
That's
we
what
really
I
are
have.
doing this, huh?
Yeah,
No.
you thought you were out of it.
yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to Group C. This is, as someone who is not as entrenched in League of
Yes.
Legends, this is the group that I keep hearing about.
Yes.
This is the group that interests me. This is the G2 eSports with Samsung Galaxy and Royal Never Give Up. Is this so-called group of death? There seems to always be one. Is this living up to the hype? Is this real?
If C9 gets in this group, in my
Oh,
opinion,
man,
my
yeah.
opinion, this is the hardest group in World's history. I don't know if Amazing agrees with that. I think this may be the hardest group in World's history if C9 gets in.
I mean, I can see why, but I also like I don't trust Chinese teams for some reason. Like, there's always that one Chinese team that just like trolls really hard in group phase and it doesn't make any sense. Like we've had this in 2015 Worlds. We had LGD who just like I don't know what they did. Yeah, we don't have to talk about it. Made me look better, so I'm happy. And like I think even this year, I don't for some reason I don't trust Chinese teams to actually be able to like understand the game. Like I don't know what it is, but they like it's not that they're bad, but they actually like they have their own take on the meta, and each one of the Chinese teams has their own take on the meta, and like we've even seen that with EDG, like when they suddenly like brought out triple TPs and that kind of stuff, when like no one in the world was playing like Jay's bot lane, and like they try so hard to be individually independent from the other Chinese teams. Then unless that changes, like I think if other teams understand the meta on a higher level, they will be outdone. They cannot win even in the best of one setting. So it will really depend on like G2's actual level. Like if G2 is obviously bad and they're not able to actually like bring what they can do like in scrims like into the games, they're gonna be destroyed by a Chinese team, by RNG. But if they're actually able to bring their play, they shouldn't lose the game to RNG.
So it's like maybe Chinese teams just need to learn to trust the meta a little bit and not try and all be snowflakes and like have their own special little let's play J Spot, etc. thing going on.
Yeah, basically. Like I don't understand that. I guess maybe this year it's a bit different because from what I've heard, and especially I think Proskurin has been talking about it, that Chinese teams have now been a bit more like cohesive almost.
Cooperative too.
Yeah, and there was actually something about like that even other Chinese players have been, or LPL players have been trying to help the Chinese teams in terms of their boot camps and try to make them better. So in case they have a cohesive understanding of the meta, and they're going to be understanding, then the individual play is actually going to come through. But if that doesn't happen, the individual play doesn't matter in the end. So it could be a group of death, and it could be the hardest group, but it doesn't take G2 to pull through. It actually takes RNG to understand the game. And that's basically how I see it.
I think the reason why all those players and teams are helping each other is because Worlds is in China this year, and so they probably want that home crowd, that hometown victory. No, seriously, like there's a lot of pride.
That makes sense. You don't want to be the host and go out in groups.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Or at least if you do, you want to put up a fight.
I think it's interesting that you think like RNG will be the most likely to like be the Chinese troll team this year. I don't know if that's true because they look really solid in their playoffs. You know, they're playing really strong champions. I think Xiaohu and Uzi we will get to this as well, are incredibly strong players. And yeah, I don't know. I think this group is super hard to predict, and it's all about like who shows up on that day almost. But I think the one team that will definitely make it through, regardless of who shows up on which day, will be Samsung. I think Samsung look really strong, especially with Ambition coming back in, and kind of their style of play works really well with the current meta. And they also have really strong players in positions where other teams don't necessarily have really strong players there. So,
no, I definitely agree. I can it really depends obviously in how the meta develops due to this ardent sensor craze almost. That either it's going to be very slow and people are going to try to scale until that point, or they're going to try to disrupt 24/7. And in case this becomes a slow, steady scaling kind of meta, which obviously I cannot tell because no one has played on this patch so far, that Samsung's actually going to be able to win every game really solidly, and they shouldn't drop more than one game. I think they will drop one game to either G2 or RNG. For sure.
Yeah, when I said before, Group B is the explosive, super fast, high tempo game.
Yeah.
This group I think is going to be also the slowest. These teams are going to feel each other out. This is going to be a scaling kind of meta. G2 was explicitly in early 2017 training their mid late game. Weldon talked about this a bit as well. RNG, they go to late game a lot of the time, and so do Samsung. So we'll see. I think this is going to be the group where, you go for the first 15 minutes, you grab a snack, you go wash your hands, whatever, and then you come back afterwards and you actually see what kind of game you're witnessing.
When the game starts at 20 minutes or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
All right.
I'm kind of working with two things here. I'm thinking either Slamsung Galaxy.
Go Resident Sleeper group.
Resident Sleeper, yeah.
Resident Seeper.
Yeah, I like that.
There you go. That. There it is.
Okay, right, there it is.
I'm coming around to these.
Just of course, when Amazing says one, you come around.
No, yeah, his was really good though.
SKT Leaves was fucking A+. Sorry. That was A+.
Let's go to Group D.
My other one, by the way, was Royal Always Give Up, but it didn't. I don't know. Anyway,
it should be, if it were going to be accurate, it would be Royal Maybe Give Up.
Maybe.
We don't know.
Yeah.
That would be the accurate one. But.
Now, again, as if I keep hearing about Group B as being the so-called Group of Death, I keep hearing
Group
about.
C. Yeah.
Group C. I'm sorry. I keep hearing about Group D being almost the opposite of that for TSM because they are with Misfits and Flash Wolves so far.
This is the fucking group of life here, man.
You need to be careful though because Misfits are a European team and you shouldn't just trash European teams for no reason. So
I'm merely gauging the public opinion out there as a neutral observer.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of people would say this is okay. Don't do that. I think a lot of people would say this probably is. Maybe the best group that TSM could. There are a couple changes maybe you could
if
make.
If they got Gigabyte Marines instead of
Are you
Misfits,
sure you want to put them against Gigabyte Marines?
I mean, there's that too.
Are you sure? Yeah. All right. So I don't know, Gabe. Opening thoughts on this group?
This is TSM's easiest group that they've ever gotten, in my opinion. Not counting 2014, where they actually had a hard group, but it was alleviated by a ban. So, a player got in their group got banned. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, me neither. I think this is their easiest group. They got the weakest Pool 1 team. They got one of the weaker Pool 2 teams, in my opinion, because Misfits is kind of weird in that when they prepare, they look really strong if they follow their game plan, as they did against Fnatic. But then, a week later, they prepared presumably against G2, but that level of preparation wasn't there such that they actually, couldn't actually do anything meaningful against G2 in Paris. So I think Misfits is good if they can prepare. They have a lot of time to prepare now. Worlds is, they have this 2 weeks, 3 week window to prepare for TSM and for Flash Wolves.
Yeah.
We'll see what that brings to the table for them. And we'll see how they deal against whatever Pool 3 seed is, because they don't have as much time to prepare for that team as well. So
is Misfits kind of the question mark in this group? Obviously there is an actual question mark because there's only 3 teams and there's going to be a 4th team. But for me, it feels like you could see a Misfits team that will put up very strong performances against the other teams in this group already. But I feel like it's almost as likely that we see a kind of a disjointed Misfits. Like you said, maybe they're not prepared. They've had the time to prepare, so one would expect that they will. But like, is that the question mark? Like for me, I really worry. I know I said this about Immortals too, but sort of worry about the bottom lane. These are two players that, again, have shown that they have these flashes of brilliance, but is Hans Sama going to be able to go up against Doublelift and come out on top? I don't know. What do you think about the Misfits situation? Amazing.
I don't think there's a question mark on Misfits. I think there's an XD mark. I think, like, if I think about it, I just, like, even if you compare them, I think they can take maybe one game off of Flash Wars, but even that is, like, almost like stretching it. I just don't see them succeeding in best of one. They actually didn't play well in the best of 3 system that we had in the USCS like over the regular season. They actually went 6 and 7. So I don't think a best of 1 system where they have no ability to actually like get something out of that game besides like a win or loss is gonna bring them anything.
They can't adjust.
Honestly, I honestly think that Flash Wars is a big question mark because, like, for me, Flash Wars can actually take down SKT one game and then lose to like GAM or whatever it is, or HQ the next game, whatever it is. So I think if Flash Wars is actually able to pull through, they can give TSM a run for the money for the first seed, especially with WE potentially coming in and actually like, almost like maybe taking games off of one another. So I think it's going to be a race for the first and second spot. But Misfits, in my eyes, is the weakest. Like, they probably equally weak to HQ and GAM. I think these 3 teams, like, they could be seeded in any group and they basically give a free win almost.
Wow.
So I honestly don't see Misfits actually doing anything in that group at all. No.
Yeah, I think Flash Wolves is the bigger question mark than Misfits. Misfits is just inconsistent. They've shown that they have serious inconsistency in best ofs, and that doesn't bode well in a best of 1. But Flash Wolves is a bigger question mark because they actually come into this tournament pretty underhyped for Pool 1. They look like the weakest Pool 1 seed of all the regions, actually. And, like, Karsa doesn't look as good as he used to. Maple definitely doesn't look as good as he used to. And SwordArt is really the only, like, performing player in the entire region. So
has that sort of been their trajectory then? That, like, they've seen a lot of drop off, but like SwordArt has sort of remained
specifically. Yeah,
in summer, but SwordArt has sort of remained this really strong part of the team, even as the rest of it sort of declines a bit.
From the games that I've seen, yes.
All right, so Flash Wolves are the big question mark in D for us. So the teams that could go into this group then are, it could be World Elite or. What was the other option that we were thinking?
It can only be World Elite or like almost like a substitute.
Oh, right. It could only be World. Yeah, because there's an NA EU.
If they make it through, which is very likely.
Right. Okay. So it's a likely that
World Elite
ends up in this group.
Strong. So
okay. Well, hey, that's gonna be an interesting group then. Maybe with the addition of the 4th team, because we're gonna see World Elite go up against TSM. That could be really cool. Honestly. So
I'm going to ignore what you just said. Because
why?
Because I would like to name this group Free SM because it's free for them, but I understand
or
that if
they are free. Who knows?
No.
Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? We are
That's the beauty
we are
of the
coming tantalizingly close.
Tantalizingly, yeah.
However,
okay.
There's actually one more question I wanted to ask Amazing to sort of wrap up the group stage in a bit of a bow.
Yeah.
So sometimes I ask people when a big tournament is coming up, I take a really broad stroke and I'm like, hey, who's going to be in the finals? Who's going to win? It's a dumb question. It's purely speculative.
Yes.
I'm not going to quite ask it this time. What I am going to ask is this the year SKT doesn't win? Because when I was speaking to my 2 colleagues here the other day when we were preparing for this podcast, I was told, if you were a betting man, this might be the year to bet against them.
Did I say that?
No one said that.
I don't think I
clear.
said that. I think I'm
lying to me now.
No, he is straight up lying. What we did say was, this is the year that you can confidently say that they are not like bona fide favorites, like compared to last year. Because last year, people saw Rox as a contender,
Rocks, yeah.
but they never actually played SKT. They avoided SKT
You
when they
said
won
that this
Korea.
was the best chance that they
This
didn't
is-
have,
this
if
is
that
the,
makes any
This
sense.
is the best chance that they didn't have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my statement could be interpreted a number of different ways.
I'm not saying.
Sure.
Listen, we're our jobs. We can't bet, so you can't be a betting man.
Bet is a
So-
turn of phrase.
Okay, so I guess let's throw it to Amazing then. What do you think? Is this a year where we could legitimately see SKT not get it?
Yeah, I honestly don't feel SKT is the strongest team coming into Worlds. I think Longzhou is actually on a higher level, and I think Samsung can give them running for the money. Like it just really depends on how the patch is basically altering the playstyles. But I think because of the fact that it's Ardent Sensor and like bot lane centric, that AD carry support synergy and AD carry and roam towards the bot lane is what's going to decide the game. And Long is the only team in Korea where I can actually say they have best laners. Basically, I think even BDD is a better laner right now than Faker. So I think that BDD is the best laner. I think I think that Khan is the best top laner. I think PraY and Gorilla are the best bot laner. So you have 3 winning lanes. If the jungle doesn't troll, there should be no way in hell they are not gonna have one lane dive ganks coming in. So that's how I see it.
Okay, guys, we have finally reached the point of the show that I was most looking forward to, which is a dissection of the list we alluded to earlier, theScore eSports' own top 20 players at Worlds list. Now, we've sent Amazing a copy of this. I am told that he doesn't quite agree with everything, which is great. And I really want to hear what he thinks. Now, the way I should do this, I'm not going to go through every single player. I think if our listeners want to check that out, please hit up theScore eSports.
I actually can show the list on the screen.
Oh, that would be
for
great.
video
Yeah.
viewers.
That would be great.
It's gonna look a little bit weird because the actual article is set to go live, but it will be live by the time this is live. So you can go check it out on our website. But greetings from the past. I will show you a less fancy version of the list with no descriptions or images. So go check out ours. But it'll be on here just in case you want to argue along with us. Maybe you want to oppose Gabe.
And of
Why
course,
is
if
it-
you are
why
listening
is this
along in audio,
structured as Gabe versus the world right now?
I'm trying to back you
remember.
up.
Just how
I'm trying to-
light
I
it is
remember
usually.
that this is a very collaborative process between myself, Josh, and one of our editors, Sean. I think that it wasn't just me. I didn't steal the show with this list. I was very collaborative. People actually tried to defer choices to me, and I kept saying during our discussion, like, no, you can't do that. You have to actually like argue your piece.
it was
right?
collaborative. It was. Now,
Yeah.
without further ado, I think what I'll start off by doing is give you our top five, maybe our bottom five.
Well, actually, just to be clear before we do this, I think we should talk about the criteria.
Yes.
Oh, I would love for
we
you guys to do
use
that.
Yes.
because it's a bit different from some of the other lists you're going to see out
It
there.
is different from Riots, for example.
For sure, yeah. There are some lists that are already out there that there's no clear indication of what the criteria were, and ours is not like that. We have very specific criteria we used. So, Gabe, you want to
Give us the TLDR.
Yeah, so in comparison to, for example, Riot, who looked over the entirety of 2017, we just looked at Summer Split and Rift Rivals, obviously, and playoffs, right? Yeah. So we looked at that entire span of time between the start of summer and right before World starts, and looked at the performance of players during that time.
So there's like definitely a strong tendency towards valuing recent performance.
Play. Yeah, we did not look at spring at all, essentially.
Okay.
We just looked at recent play. And further than that, we looked at players' champion pools, their statistics and advanced statistics. We did the eye test with a lot of these players, looking at how they played and, things that stats can't really pick up.
Oh.
And then we looked at the impact of the player on that team.
On their team, yeah.
Right?
And this was, I think, a key thing because we talked a little bit about Xmithie as a player that could potentially be on the list.
He is not.
And he is not, but the argument for him was he has this huge impact on his team. Like, do you see Immortals being here without Xmithie? That, I mean, probably not because of how big a role he plays on his team. So, again, key things, recent performance. Because what we're trying to gauge is the strongest players at Worlds right now.
And
we're not
yes.
trying to predict
who's going to do well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have the criteria, let's get right into the list. What I'm going to do is read up the top 5, and I want to hear from Amazing first.
Yeah.
Actually, and
Don't
then
hear from me.
if there is something to defend, then I want to hear from you guys.
There likely is, or at least one thing to explain.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So I guess we usually count down, but I'm gonna count up. I'm gonna start at numero uno. We have in the number 1 slot PraY from Longzhu Gaming. In the number 2 slot, Chaboy Faker, SKT. Okay.
It's Chaboy Faker, yeah.
Number 3, Kuve, Samsung Galaxy. Number 4, Khan, Longzhu again. Number 5, BDD, Longzhu again. That's our top 5. Amazing.
And if you're looking at the video, you can now see the list. Again, sorry, it's not pretty, but I just
It's also not the entire list. We got a little.
We have some
19
honorable
and
men.
20.
Oh,
19 and 20 is not being shown.
Oh, is it
Gotta,
not?
like, scroll down a bit.
While we fix that, let's hear from Amazing.
Okay. I definitely do not think that Faker should be put off of the number 1 spot. I can see why you would do it, but I think if PraY is so far up there, then Gorilla has to be too. Like, I think they as a dual lane work together, and like they perform together similar to how I see it with Mithy and Sven, like too, that if you separate one from the other, it doesn't make sense, and I think the two of them should be together. I don't quite see how Kuve is above Khan, but I guess in terms of team impact and importance to Samsung Galaxy, especially if you count him towards the like Gauntlet run, I think he does have a high importance for the team. And I honestly do think that BDD, yeah, I think BDD is appropriately rated. Like, and PraY Faker is kind of like a toss-up too, and Khan Kuve, I guess, in the end too. So I can see why he did it, but I still do think that Faker has to be on the number 1 spot, because if you take him off of SKT is not going to do anything, and they wouldn't actually be a contending team in the league. Whereas I think if you exchange, for example, Kuve, or like if you exchange Kuve, for example, like you would still have a well-performing playoff team in terms of Samsung Galaxy. Maybe not a world contender, but you still have like at least a contender for that 3rd spot in Korea.
So let me just say, I think it's really interesting that, so your criteria for this list would be kind of replacing X player with the league average.
like value over replacement.
Yeah.
as we would
is
say.
that an accurate kind of depiction of that?
Basically not over league average, but over like let's say a top 5, top 4 player, top 3 player, like something like that. So still contending, but still like to have a bit of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I guess average is a fair way to say it too.
I guess so. So we talked a lot about criteria. That was actually the first thing that we had to debate over, funnily enough, before we even got to players.
And we had to pin it down a lot throughout the whole
Yeah.
process. Like, just saying, like, somebody would say, like, well, Faker's been a world so many times, he's so comfortable with the stage, but we're like, we're not talking about past performance.
Yeah.
We know that Faker
Is the greatest player of all time.
yes, and likely, that will likely be his label in the future, right? Like, that's something you could predict. But here's the thing, right? Does that mean he's the best player at Worlds at this moment? And that's really what we tried to pin down, and we had to keep coming back to it because these players have competitive legacies. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do. And you want to say, well, I mean, look, he's the best player in the world. But
BDD doesn't have a competitive legacy at all.
Exactly.
He's a legacy as a bench warmer, and now he leads the LCK and KDA, and he's joint MVP of the LCK. Like, again, it's another problem, I guess, that I have with the value over replacement metric is that for really successful teams, that impact is almost not necessarily felt, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have 4 Longzhu players in the top 7. If we decided that value over replacement doesn't mean that the team performs any necessarily worse, then, that kind of devalues all of those players by virtue of all of them being so goddamn good, right?
Yeah.
So,
plus the other thing I think is, like, value over replacement really doesn't, like, it works pretty well in baseball, for example.
It also works really well when determining like MVP, right?
Yes.
Like, that is a great metric for that.
But it doesn't totally bring in like team impact as part of a unit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can say, oh yeah, this guy's KDA is going to be like X better or whatever. But like look at Xmithy, right? If you looked only at Xmithy's stats and you were like, what is his value over a replacement? You might
not great.
You might come to that conclusion, right? Like it's not that incredible. His stats maybe aren't that incredible, but we know how big a part of that team he is.
Yeah.
He's an important part of that team. And if you just replace him with a jungler who maybe is mechanically better, statistically better, is Immortals going like?
Are they going to Worlds?
Like I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So those are we've
those are the
kind of
questions
rehashed
to
the
grapple.
criteria. Yeah.
Okay, so we're pretty damn clear on the criteria at this point.
and even though we're clear, there's still going to be people commenting,
so
being like, you know.
Yeah.
If we go with the criteria that you have, I do see why PraY is so far up. I still do think that Faker, like no matter what, especially given that he, at least like compared to his team, performed decently in the finals, that like the amount of strength that he brings to the team and the amount of and he brought to the team in the recent playoff performances, I think that he's still a stronger player and a stronger, like almost a more impactful player than PraY is.
Right.
Because of the fact that PraY is so reliant on Gorilla and Gorilla is so reliant on PraY, vice versa, that the two together are basically what make or break Longzhu, whereas Faker alone does that for his team. And he's like already, like he has done that recently too in the playoff performances.
Yeah.
But I can see why PraY is so far up.
I can fully agree with that metric for playoffs.
Yeah.
Another thing that it's a really unfortunate knock on PraY, but his playoff performance isn't necessarily as large a sample size as
for sure.
SKT and Faker by virtue of him only having to play one best of. But also, we're looking at summer season too, right? And SKT was pretty inconsistent. Even Faker was a little inconsistent in that summer season, which, you know, compare that to PraY and the consistency of PraY across the entirety of summer, even though he only had one best of 5 that he had to play. You know, that bot lane, PraY especially, looked incredibly good and looked good on champions that you wouldn't really consider PraY to be good at, right? Like, PraY had really stellar performances on hyper carries, not named Ashe, and really brought Longzhu ahead in that metric. And, you know, he is actually the most pivotal part of the Longzhu playstyle. Like we mentioned before, bot lane is this rock for Longzhu. It's never going to move. It's never going to lose. And part of that is because PraY is so consistent in terms of getting those trades, getting that CS, creating the push such that the rest of his team can go buck wild.
Okay, so amazing. You mentioned the synergy between PraY and Gorilla. Just for reference, we've got him at number 7, I believe, on our list.
And the highest support.
And that
He is
that's
number one
nice.
support.
The highest support. I'm going to go through the bottom 5 now. Now, after that, we will leave the floor to a little bit more of an open discussion.
Sure.
You know, for example, the origins of players, like what region they're from, who's missing from the list possibly. But regarding the bottom 5,
Also Chinese players, where do you put them?
this is also
It's
a
hard,
thing.
hard to say. It's hard to say.
For us at number 15, we've got SwordArt. At number 16, we got Doublelift. Number 17 is Mystic. Number 18 is Reckless. 19 is Jensen. And just squeezing in the list is Condi. What do you think of that? Amazing.
I mean, I think SwordArt, like because of the strength of the LMS region right now, is kind of like overrated generally. I think he's obviously a really, really strong player, and he actually is able to impact his team, even though they're almost like declining compared to like the previous forms. I still don't rate him as highly and would probably put him lower, maybe at 19 or 20, or even completely out and put Mythy instead.
Oh, wow.
I think that Doublelift, I guess he's appropriately rated. I think putting him at number 20 is kind of doing a disjustice. And I think like as LoL eSports did it, so I think him being higher up and actually like almost like equalizing the distance to Bjergsen and getting closer to him shows like the kind of importance that he has for the roster. And I definitely do agree with that. I don't see Reckless nor Jensen, and more so Jensen than Reckless, making this list. I don't think he's that good. I think he's definitely worse than Perks. Because just like even like a top 20 player at Worlds should not fail in the first round of playoffs against Dignitas. he should carry that series and make it to the finals or semis and not make the run through Gauntlet. And that's where I see Perks like succeeding. Where I rate like all the G2 players besides like obviously Trick and Expect, because I think they're kind of interchangeable at this point. Whereas they used to be like pivotal points, especially Trick coming in last few words. I think that Perks, Mithy, and Sven, they're all crucial parts of that success roster. So putting one or two of them on that list would basically almost like validate what they have done in EU over the past year and a half, and I think would put them in a better spotlight, because I think that's how it's supposed to be rated. I don't think a player that is technically not a top 4 finish in NA, nor a player that is like technically not even actually failed against the second best, supposedly like 4th, 5th best team in EU, like in Reckless, should be necessarily on that list. Though individually speaking, like I can see how people, and you guys especially, are rating Reckless that high. I think Sven is just a better international version of Reckless. I think Reckless playstyle and play has been enabled mostly by the fact that everyone else is fucking bad. And I mean, I was part of it, I guess, like being on MM and like losing that hard. But I saw so many flaws within like Fnatic's playstyle, and similar to like, I think C9 almost falls into the similar kind of like sentiment, that a lot of the things that they do shouldn't be happening and shouldn't be working, and yet they do because of the fact that the players are just like individually better, but they don't have this like almost like macro sense. And I think that's where Sven, Mithy, and Perks like in terms of potential words performance, and especially playoff performance that they've put up, should be like regarded more so than they are.
Yeah, I thought the G2 playoff performance was really good, but you said it yourself, Amazing. EU is bad. EU is looking real bad,
we're bad,
right?
We're bad.
And not just that, like there are teams with major flaws, and G2 themselves looked really bad in the summer season. They looked super inconsistent. You know, players weren't performing, especially Perks, up to snuff necessarily.
Now,
during the season, right?
If I can just frame this, I'm listening to Amazing. He's saying Perks, Mithy, Sven. I'm looking at our list. They're not on our list.
Zero G2
so
players.
There's a bit of a disconnect going on here.
And I think it's interesting to talk about like players like SwordArt, who are very clearly like, you know, one of the best players in their region. But, you know, he's proven that through like actual domestic success and like winning the LMS title and like going through and coming first in the regular season to show that. You know, G2 players, they didn't show that throughout the season. They didn't show that at Rift Rivals at all, right? Like they didn't even show up to Rift Rivals.
We don't talk about that anymore.
Exactly, right? But playoffs, I totally agree. If we're talking about recency, like they showed up in playoffs, and I do think that G2 can show up at Worlds given their playoff performance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can only count their playoff performance. We have to look at holistically the entire summer, and they looked, you know, really inconsistent, not that great at the beginning of summer right after MSI. So
I wanted, when we were discussing this list, I wanted Perks on the list, and my reasoning was that like it is like actually like what Amazing said, it's hard to not put Mithy on this list if you put Sven on the list, because it feels like they're very much like a unit, and we haven't, I can't remember the last time I saw them play separately, right? Like was there a sub early season or no?
Like
no, that was mid. That was Perks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted Perks on this list, and particularly because Jensen is at the bottom of this list, I was thinking like, all right, Perks versus Jensen, what's the deal here? And my feeling is this, and I want to kind of transition to Perks versus Jensen right now.
Sure.
Is the potential for Jensen higher than Perks, but Jensen has a problem sometimes with big performances, which he himself has admitted. I'm not like taking random shots.
Yeah.
This is my feeling. Like I feel like if Jensen does not, I'm going to just use the word choke. I don't know if it's completely appropriate to call it choke, but if Jensen is at his best, is he better than Perks? And my feeling is yes. But will you consistently get that performance?
Not necessarily.
I don't think so. And he himself admitted in playoffs, right, that he wasn't there when his team really needed him.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that really drove the Jensen versus Perks argument home for me on the side of Jensen, other than NA bias, lol, whatever, is if you look at Jensen, if you look at the eye test for Jensen, if you look at the statistics for Jensen, he probably had the most insane mid lane performance since like 2013 or 2015 Faker. Like, this man completely dominated his lane.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
No, but just in terms of numbers,
like
in terms
raw
of
numbers,
raw numbers,
yeah, the numbers are very good.
He completely dominated his lane. You know, he had a lot of jungle pressure going his way, but he really picked up for that team, picked up on utility champions, picked up on hard carry champions. He really was like the center of that team, the middle of that team. But those numbers, in my opinion, put him in a really good spot. Yeah, Cloud9 looked like total trash against Dignitas. They didn't look that great against CLG either. But if you take the holistic view of Jensen's summer performance, choking, quote unquote, aside, he looked amazing. He looked so stellar.
I see it. I think I see it similar to Josh. Like, those are like what I'd see like between Perks and Jensen. That like Jensen, from what I feel, he could be the best mid in the not necessarily in the West, but I feel like he has the potential to become the best at something. I don't know what it is, but he's the best at something. Maybe it's carrying. I think that's maybe the metric you can put him under. That he's the best at actually carrying his team, putting his team in a good spot just because of his individual performance. And Perks is moreover the guy that like, I guess he runs the show because his team is already good and he's just making them a bit better. Whereas I guess Jensen is someone that is actually making a bad team pretty good. Like, because I don't think that this Cloud9 team, even if you want to say that they have like great talent, what it is actually a strong team. I think their performance against CLG and them losing to Dignitas just almost like discredits them from the spot of like being a good contending team. I think they can pull out individual performance to carry the team. Snake has done that. Jensen has done that, especially this year. That they're more so reliant on like the individual performance, and that's what Jensen actually puts through as an individual. So I myself, from my point of view, like because of the fact that I haven't been a flashy player since my 2014 run with TSM, I kind of like see it like in general, like the metrics a bit different. As I said, like I'm always like who has the most value from what I feel in terms of like over his replacement player, and that's if you put a random mid, I guess to make your argument even like that I'm thinking about it, if you put a random mid at G2, that would still be good. If you put a random mid in C9, that would probably be
not good.
Yeah. So I guess I'm making your argument. So there's that helping out.
but I think also you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Is that G2 they don't need Perks to absolutely win the game for them.
But when he's on, they will absolutely win the game.
But that's like the team impact part of the thing. It's almost kind of hard to see the Perks impact. Although he did, I mean, this is an interesting case study. At the beginning of the summer split, I believe he was sick.
Yeah, he didn't play.
It was after MSI.
And they still won.
They actually did still win?
They played against Rocket. So.
I guess that's true.
Okay, so I actually want to hear more from Amazing on what he thinks that this list of ours is missing, or maybe that he thinks is really topsy-turvy, other than the G2 players.
I mean, you can make the case for G2 players as well, Amazing.
Oh,
if you
absolutely,
want.
yeah.
I think that what I feel is missing is just like, I mean, I guess just like maybe the eye test, maybe it's just my particular point of view that I honestly don't regard. Like, first off, I don't think Mako, I don't think Wolf's even that good right now. I think that a lot of the players that you guys listed are good in a traditional sense, but they're not good from the eye test, if that makes sense. I don't feel their presence, I don't feel that presence. That's what I'd say. That sometimes like that's missing. Like I think.
Oh yeah,
I don't see Reckless like being. I mean I guess from the eye test you'd say that Reckless is up there, but I like my feeling, just my guts just tell me that Sven is a way more accomplished player due to the combination with Mithy, like for example that, and that for example someone like Blank and Mako and Wolf they just look good because they're on really good teams, and not because they're intrinsically good. So that's where I guess I draw the line. Like it's just hard to discuss. Like when you come down to top 20 players, you're most likely gonna have a huge list of the Korean first place finishers, third place finishers, and then you have like a couple of Chinese people and then thrown like Björksen there every words anyway.
How'd you
And
know
then
that's what we did?
then you throw like no, but that's what everyone does, and I like. If you come down to that point of like the top 20 players in the world, like you're gonna split hairs, and there's no way to get an accurate representation that is 100% gonna like please everyone. So every interpretation, if it's being reasoned enough and the criteria are pretty set as has been with you guys, like I don't think there's a way to like necessarily argue that, unless you just want to be like arguing about personal feelings in the end, because that's what it comes down to. Because some people regard, even at the times, for example, when people were thinking like in 2016, like Trick was apparently this really insanely good player. Like from my eye test, when I played against him, I didn't feel it, whereas other people rated him completely differently. So like it's always up to that like in the end, I guess playing against certain players gives you a completely different feel to like the viewer almost. So like even if I think about the performances that I've had against these players in like 2015, 2014, thinking back and like thinking like how they have been standing and like playing right now, like seeing their impact on those teams, like I have a different point of view and basically know what they're actually doing within those teams. So I have a I guess just a more intrinsic, almost like just what is it like just yeah, I mean, just like a view that I cannot really explain like without.
You're in the know. You have insider knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Insider knowledge. It's like not necessarily given to everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and specifically for Europe too, right?
Yeah.
I know you at the beginning you were talking about QV and why QV's so high on the list. I just wanted to defend myself here because
Gabe was freaking out when you said that.
I was. Well, no, it's more like I was the one who was very much like QV.
You were the cheerleader.
And he, just for reference, like everyone considers Khan this like, big laning monster threat. Let me give you a statistic. QV in the 1v1 in the top lane has more solo kills than Khan across the entirety of summer. That's thing number one. That wasn't the single determination.
Was that the hair that went to the left instead of right?
But just like to give you an example of this guy's dominance, like his other players were basically feeding their asses off for the entire beginning first round robin of summer, and this guy like with his Camille, his Rumble, his Jarvan just like dragged them over the finish line in order to qualify for Worlds. And him and Ambition were like key parts of that. Ambition with the late game play and late game shot calling and ability to control the mid wave, and QV with just his ability, like raw ability in the 1v1. Like I'm serious, this guy in the 1v1 is probably the best player at this tournament. Just straight
up. At his position or just
in the 1v1, like in a 1v1
like against his actual lane matchup.
Yeah,
okay,
like
gotcha.
in laning, this guy is dominating. All the statistics point to that, and the eye test points to that, and he has a really clever, unique champ pool that's actually really wide as well. So
yeah, that's especially what he has over Khan. I think this champ pool that is almost like a champion C at that point.
Yeah,
like I think when I like I guess when you watch Kuve, like compared to Khan is someone similar to Huni, and Kuve is similar to Untara. Like he's still strong, he's still able to perform. But he will not be the flashy kind of player that like necessarily, even though he has more 1v1 kits, it's not going to be the kind of flashy 1v1 kit when he suddenly outplays his opponent completely. It's more like solid. He knows when his matchup is stronger. He knows when he's able to actually like perform better on a certain champion than the other player, and actually abuses that to that extent. And you will always get the same result. If he's supposed to be 10 CS up, he's going to be 10 CS up.
Yeah.
Whereas with Khan, I guess he's either going to be 30 CS up or just 3, you know, like that. But he's able to like at least show off more so than I guess Kuve is.
Yeah, that was basically kind of the determinations that really went into it for me, just how strong QV is, how consistent he is, and how he can play into these good matchups. But also that Khan has a really huge flaw, like Amazing said, where it's his champ pool is kind of weird. He doesn't really play tanks for his team in a very tank-focused meta in the top lane. So that is obviously a strength of his, that he is able to perform despite that. But the fact that he is almost unwilling to do that for his team may find Longshu put in some difficult positions as a result. So.
I bought your justification when you presented it. I bought it. I was actually a bit surprised because I think there's a lot of understandably justifiable hype around Khan.
Yeah.
But I think in our ranking, I think that Kuve really brings the team impact part.
Yes.
Yes, besides
100%.
the lane, besides just the domination of his lane, he maxes out for us like the team impact part of it, because
fully agree.
Again, like, could you imagine his team being here without him? And it feels like the answer is no, right? I don't know, but
Now I wonder, Amazing, if you've got so we've kind of gone up and down our list. You've given us your criteria, our criteria. I wonder if there's a player or players, individuals who you think maybe didn't make our list, or maybe didn't make some other people's lists out there, that you think is going to outperform their rep, so to speak, that's going to rise up, sort of an underdog, a dark horse player that you could give us right now.
They could even be like a top 100 player that becomes a top 50 player.
That's true. They don't have to become the number one.
Yeah, or top 20 even, yeah. Just someone who's like going to aggressively outperform world's expectations.
I think Doublelift is actually going to outperform his already like high expectations. I think he's more integral to this TSM lineup iteration of like this year because of how the meta is than Bjergsen is, simply because of like this ardent sensor craze and whatever it is. That if he's able to actually like display to the mechanical skill that I think he does have, and is actually like not trolling against the Victor and jumps and lose the game, I think this guy is actually gonna outperform like his expectations. He's going to perform better than a lot of, like, first of all, Chinese players that are like ranked above him. With that is basically UZI, and I guess Mystic is kind of like up there. He's an 80k, right? Mystic?
Yeah. But we have him below Doublelift.
Kind of on the same, like, and I think Bang also right now in his current form can be outperformed. The only one that I think he's not able to outperform is going to be PraY. But I think Doublelift is the one that is going to be like the Western hope almost in terms of like individual play towards the other regions. And I think that I don't want to sound like too fanboy. That's the issue. So
it's okay.
It's kind of hard.
So you're saying he can go from 16 to at least 8th? Is your?
He can go. Yeah, he can go to top. I think top 5.
Top
like,
5.
Actually.
Wow.
But maybe that's just my personal feeling about, because I think his performance last year at Worlds and his like ability to actually carry the game and his upkeep in terms of mechanical skill is just incredible. So I think his potential out of the Western players is the least limited, and I think he's the one that can go up the most, but he can also go down the most by simply trolling a game and just throwing it away.
Right.
So
it's also like a pretty good meta for him too, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's insane meta for him right now.
So
Tristana, Kog'Maw, Xayah. You can even NA starting to flex Lucian bot. Like, that's his favorite champion, dude.
Flex Lucian bot. That's awesome.
He's a mid laner now. You
Sorry,
flex him.
Was
bot.
that English?
Yeah.
Flex Lucian bot?
Yeah.
Lex Luthor.
Oh, that's what we need for Lucian. We need some kind of like Superman, like Superman Thresh, Lex Luthor Lucian. Like, you just flip it.
Lex Lucian, right?
Lex Luthor.
Luthor.
Yeah. No, they just lost a lawsuit about that one.
Oh,
that one.
Edgar Davis.
Yeah. You don't want to threaten another
It's
lawsuit
hilarious.
at this time.
I
so.
see. Okay, stay away from the copyright infringement.
Yeah. Lawyer up, Colin. Lawyer up.
What's a lawyer up? Yeah. Sorry, Riot. Forgive me. With that being said, we are burning time here, running out of it, and I'm wondering, Amazing, if there's anything that we didn't get to touch on that you wanted to discuss, or anything else you wanted to say just to everyone listening out there right now.
I mean, I think the only thing that like we could touch is basically like just thinking about like how Crown is maybe represented, because like that's the only player that I looked at your list, and I've looked at the LoL eSports list, and obviously like how he's being represented right now, that he's actually like in terms of like almost like a redeeming player, but I just don't see it. You know, that's that, and I guess I am similar to you guys where I don't put him into top 20. What is your guys' opinion actually on him? Because I just see such a difference in like perception of him that I cannot really pinpoint it.
Yeah, so I think Riot first off are overhyping him a bit by virtue of, you know, doing that chase your legend story, trying to build up this redemption arc for him. I think his spring was really good, and I think that kind of gives him an edge on the Riot list, that his spring was so good, but his summer was really 50-50. Like, he's another one of those players where he had like those high moments and those super low moments, and that's actually reflected pretty plainly in the fact that he has very average stats for an LCK mid laner, and yet is tied with Cuvée for the most MVP points on his team.
That's interesting.
So
I guess
yeah.
It's what he said. The highs and lows.
Yeah. So I think Riot's list and their hype reflects obviously those highs, where last year he was the second best mid laner in the world, like pretty easily. But I don't see that right now. Will it happen at Worlds? It could. It very well could if he comes back into the swing of things. He's working really hard, etc. But right now, going into Worlds, if we just stopped and we were like, let's look at using our criteria, how good is Crown right now? I don't think he's in the top 20 at all. I don't think he's considered even in the honorable mentions.
He's not wearing the
top
crown
20.
just yet.
No, not yet.
And I think that was what I wanted to pinpoint is the Riot list is an attempt to project how they will do.
Yes.
And I think we would all be okay with somebody saying, I think Crown is going to really grind it out and he's gonna pop off. Yeah. I think we could all agree that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So it's not insane to think about it. But right now, or even like before we see him on stage, what is Crown as a player? Like who is he? What is he gonna bring to the table? And I think that's simply why he drops off our list and he doesn't make it. But I see Riot's argument with their criteria. Just don't see it with ours. Yeah. Honestly, that's kind of how I view it.
Well, that's fair. Hopefully the guys provided a satisfactory answer for you. Amazing.
They did.
Awesome.
Excellent.
That's what we're here for.
And then with I'll give you another opportunity just to do any shout outs if you want to the
Final
fans
thoughts.
or final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Oh, nice to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me, and shout out to my fans and hopefully you guys are watching too. So, hey there.
Heck yeah. Hope free agency ends soon for you as well.
Yeah, we hope to hear some good news on that front.
I like vacation.
That's how it is, eh? Nice.
You Europeans and your vacation, honestly.
Exactly.
So true. Amazing. Thank you so much for making time for us here on the Score Esports podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow, I mean, we really covered a lot of ground there, didn't we, guys?
Yeah, and I know that you guys could have done more too. I mean, if I
Hold me
walked
back,
out of this
Colin.
room,
Hold me back.
I probably would have come back here 8 hours and you'd still be talking to him. It's great. And I like how at the end he ended up wanting to know where you guys stood on something. I feel like you may have convinced him, of your criteria and your methods and your way of thinking. So that's awesome.
It's weird that somebody wants to know what I think. So I felt really good. Felt really good.
Savage.
Oh,
I almost don't even know how to respond. So I'm just elated.
You're starting to learn how to give your opinion. Is that how we're doing it?
There was a time where I gave my opinion a lot. Actually, and, that time has sort of ended. So,
but now we're creeping back.
I don't feel like anyone at the Score Esports has too much trouble voicing their opinion readily at the drop of a pin.
Vampire the Masquerade is awful.
I think it's more like it's less like do I voice my opinion, but more like does anyone care? Like that's really how we got on this topic in the first place.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Well,
I care about your opinion, Josh.
Oh, thank you.
I hope if nothing else, Amazing was helpful to everybody's here's self-esteem.
Yes.
Now, he may have had a few disagreements, but he seemed to come around with the criteria in the end. If you listening out there don't quite agree with the list, and I'm sure there are people, please let us know. Tweet us, comment on the story. Let Gabe and Josh know.
Send me an angry
flame
worded
them.
letter.
Definitely flame them.
Tell me you're irate via like postcard.
That was some high verbiage. Tell him
Yeah.
you're irate. That means flame him.
No one uses mail anymore. Come on.
Yeah.
You send legal things by mail. That's pretty much it, right? I'm sorry.
Gabe is a communication hipster.
I'm
He
hoping
wants the
for
mail.
my like G2 fandom cease and desist letter
Oh, like
after that list.
like you must cease and desist as a
Yeah.
result of not adding Sven Mickey Perch. Honestly, I feel like Perch should be on that list, but we've already rehashed this. I think we
Yeah.
argued for like 20 minutes.
we
about
did.
G2,
It was
so.
much longer than our other discussions, and I can see the value to that.
Yeah, the bottom I think was pretty fluid.
Yeah.
like a lot of us were willing to concede one way or the other.
So
Yeah.
true.
I do think though, I love that Jensen's on the list. I love it. I hope he lights some people up. I hope he gets a chance to clap Faker.
He might be in the group of death
But-
too, right? So that'd be
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have to wait and see, guys. Until next time, for the Score Esports podcast. Rather, this has been the Score Esports podcast, and for Josh and Gabe, I am Colin McNeil saying GG.
GG.
Farewell.
It may or may not be a re.
Easy.